Shana Tova. Everyone hear me okay? Okay, I have to stoop a little bit. I don't want to readjust the mic. My name is Mark Gale. I'm the current president here. I want to welcome everyone. It's really terrific to see everybody in person here. It's really, really nice. Just have a few quick announcements, explanations, and then we'll start things going. If you have any questions or if anything we can do to make you feel at home, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of our ushers. The ushers will have a little boutonniere, a little flower on their lapel or dress, and they're here to help you. They can help you obtain large print books, hearing devices, and anything else that we can help you with. We just want to remind you to please wear your masks at all times inside the building. And even though it's great to see everyone together and we want to give hugs and all that, let's try to maintain social distancing just to be, just in the interest of safety. And please silence all devices, including your cell phone. And take a moment to locate the nearest exit. We have exits both sides of the back, and that way and that way. And the ushers are here to help you in case there's any need to move around the building or should we have to leave. But knock wood, everything's going to be great. Thank you all, and please enjoy the service.
Thank you, Mark. Wow. Welcome. I know this is a wow moment for those of you who haven't been in our sanctuary since before the pandemic, and maybe it's your first time joining our community. Welcome to all of you, and welcome to all of you who are joining us from home or from wherever you may be. We're so glad to be welcoming a new year together. Shana Tova. Shana, the Hebrew word for year, comes from the same root as cycle. What a gift the sacred cycle of holy days is for us. We have the opportunity to look back across the year as we turn and return to ourselves and to each other, to what holds and transcends us all, and what binds us to each other. A sense of belonging to a story larger than ourselves, a tradition which spans millennia, a legacy of coming together to reflect, to strengthen and renew ourselves before we move forward into a new chapter in the book of our lives. This past year, which we let go of today, was in so many ways not what we hoped or expected. We entered into this past year very much aware of the uncertainty of our shared future, and while the past year has had peaks as well as valleys, hope and optimism as well as deeply felt disappointment and anxiety, we have held on. And just seeing so many of you here and knowing how many of you are out there streaming our services, to me, that shows just how tightly we have held on to that tree of life, that Eitz Chaim that is our sacred tradition. To move through this time, we've had to come to know ourselves in new ways, and we've had to stand firm in who we are as we figure out how to live in a changed world. To move through this time, we've had to turn toward others in new ways, using new technologies of the heart and new technology in a literal sense. To move through this time, we've had to open our eyes to what matters most, reprioritize and reorient, and recognize that we need rest and renewal in order to meet the unique challenges of this moment. The intensity of the high holy days, the days of awe, as they push us to a new attunement to our vulnerability and our connectedness, our interdependence, our power and our powerlessness. This intensity of this cycle of holy days has actually spilled out into the flow of the last 2 years. Welcoming 5782, we're each bringing a complex set of emotions into this sanctuary, whether physical sanctuary or virtual. And as I say every week at Shabbat services, every one of you is welcome here from wherever you are coming, emotionally, spiritually, Jewishly. You are home now. You are home with an ancient tradition and people which you were either born into or chose to become a part of and connected to. You are home because the dawn of a new year calls us home to ourselves through our connections with each other, with ancient melodies and words and rituals, with God. Welcome home. We're so glad to have you. We're so glad to be with you. May we bring strength, comfort, compassion, and joy to one another in this shared holy space, simply by our presence. You are home, so please know that your full hearts, your full souls, your memories, sadnesses, fears, and hopes are all welcome here. They are what bind us to each other and to our people across the millennia and across the planet. Our beautiful beating hearts, our tears, our voices, our breath, together create something that is kadosh, 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 as we chant in the Kedusha blessing, holy. So this morning, with all of us breathing, remembering, breaking our hearts open together to face the raw beauty of life in all of its vulnerability and possibility, thank you for being here, out there, and here under the dome to help create this Kehila Kedosha, this holy community. May these Yamim Noraim bring you closer to yourself, to others, and to what transcends and binds us to one another. I am truly honored to be here with and here for you. We begin on page 6, singing the simple yet profound words, especially now. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. How good it is to sit together. And I'm counting all of you on the live stream. You are together with us as well. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad.
How good it is to be together this morning. What are our intentions this morning as we begin to pray on this Rosh Hashanah day? What is our kavanah, our hopes for this new year? I'm inspired by the words of the poet Alden Sullivan, who says that we should pray for wildly unimaginable blessings this year. He wrote, "Let us dream wildly unimaginable blessings, blessings so unexpected, blessings so beyond our hopes for this world, blessings so unbelievable in this era that their very existence uplifts our vision of creation, our relationships to each other, and our yearning for life itself. Let us dream wildly unimaginable blessings, a complete healing of body, mind, and of spirit, a complete healing for all, the end of suffering and strife, the end of plague and disease, when kindness flows from the river of love, when goodness flows from the river of grace, awakened in the spirit of all beings, when God's light radiating holiness is seen by everyone. Let us pray with all of our hearts for wildly unimaginable blessings, so that God will hear the call to open the gates of the garden, seeing that we haven't waited, that we've already begun to repair the world and testimony to our faith itself, our faith in each other, and our faith in the Holy One. Blessed be God's name. Let us begin to pray and ask for wildly unimaginative blessings. We turn to page 144 in our prayer book.
Page 138.
יושב על כיסא רם ונישא שוכן עד מרום וקדוש שמו וחטאו רננו צדיקים באדוני לישרים נבע תהילה בפי ישרים תתרומם ובדברי צדיקים תתברך ובלשון חסידים תתקדש ובקרב קדושים תתהלל ובמחלות רביבות עמך בית ישראל ברינה יתפר שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור. ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות הבוחר בשירי זמרה מלך אלכי העולמים. Amen.
We continue on page 141.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. אמן. בעלמא דברך חירותי ואמליך מלכותי בחייכונו ויומך ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רב מבורך לעולם עולם מעלמך יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעולמה ואמרו Amen.
We rise in body or spirit for the Baruch Hu on page 142.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
We give thanks to God for the morning light, for the gift of creation. I'm inspired by the words of Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who wrote about God's unending love, that we are loved by an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love, embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. We turn to the Shema. We turn to page 144 in the middle of the page.
That love that Rabbi Schaefer was speaking of creates in us light, and that light is light we shine for each other. We chant together of a new light, Or Chadash. In this new year, how might we bring that new light to one another? Or Chadash al Zion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehera leoro. Or Chadash al Zion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehera leoro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. As we prepare to recite the Shema, it's traditional to gather the four corners of our talit, our talis, if we're wearing one this morning. If not, you can take this as a visualization exercise. But we're going to gather physically the four corners, the fringes. The fringes themselves meant to remind us of the mitzvot, of the commandments. But when we bring them together in one hand, they can symbolize the ingathering of the Jews from the four corners of the earth, how connected we are to one another through the centuries and across the planet. And they also can symbolize the interconnectedness and interdependence of all of humanity, which we've learned so much more starkly and strongly during this time of pandemic. But that unity, that interconnectedness, is a reflection of the ultimate unity that transcends us all and binds us together, the unity of God. So we're going to sing on 148, V'havienu l'shalom, before we sing together the Shema, using our High Holy Day melody. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu komemiut le'artzeinu ki el poel yeshut ata uvanu v'acharta mikol am velashon v'keravtanu l'shimcha gadol sela sela באמת להודות לך ולייחדך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו seated. Chant together on page 152. ואהבת. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We imagine ourselves linked hand in hand with our ancestors who stood at the shores, having crossed from slavery into freedom, singing this great song of awe and wonder and gratitude at their new freedom. May we merit in the coming year many moments to have such a sense of gratitude and relief. We connect with our ancestors as we sing Mi Chamocha on page 164. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים יחד כולם הודו הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ובטח נאמך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
The Amidah on Rosh Hashanah creates space for all of our extra prayers this morning. We ask God to remember us and to inscribe us for another year in a book of life. And we recite Unatana Tokef, a humble understanding that our future is not yet written and that there is much that we can do today and the days ahead to change the course of our lives and the lives of those around us. We ask that we be written into the book of life. We ask that that book be sealed and that we be brought towards a new year of health and good fortune. We turn to the Amidah on page 166, and we rise together as we pray for the ability to be able to pray this morning.
Adonai, שפתי תפתח, ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו אלוהי אברהם אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Velohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor Vehanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אמן. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה, רב להושיע, מוריד הצער. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך מימית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה הכל. ובכן לך תעלה קדושה, כי אתה אלוהינו מלך. ונתן תוקף קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא והיום, ובו תנשא מלכותך, ויכון בחסד כיסאך, ותשב עליו באמת. אמת, כי אתה הוא דיין, ומוכיח ויודע ועד, וכותב וחותם, וסופר ומונה, ותזכור את כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו יקרא, וחתום יד כל אדם בו. ובשופר גדול ייתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפזון וחיל ורעדה יאחזון אוי 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 ואמרו הנה יום הדין אוי יפקוד על צבא מרום בדין וכל באי עולם וכל באי עולם יברון לפניך כבני מרום כי בקרת רועדרו ומעביר צונו תחת שבטו כן כן תעביר ותספור ותמנה ותפקוד נפש כל חי ותחתוך קצפה לכל בריאה ותחתוך קצפה לכל בריאה ותחתוך קצפה לכל בריאה ותכתוב את גזר דינם. מראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור מכך יכתבון.
On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed.
כמה יברון וכמה יברון.
How many will pass from this world? How many will be born into it?
מי יחיה ומי ימות.
Who will live and who will die?
בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו.
Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time?
מי באש ומי במים.
Who by fire and who by water?
מי בחרב ומי בחיה.
Who by war and who by beast?
מי ברעב ומי בצמא.
Who by famine and who by drought?
מי ברעש ומי במגפה.
Who by earthquake and who by plague?
מי ים מי בחניקה ומי בסקילה.
Who by strangling and who by stoning?
בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתמון mi ashkit umi yitara,
Who will rest and who will wander?
mi shalev umi yityaser,
Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled?
mi ani umi yasir, mi arum umi yashir, mi ushapal.
Who will be calm and who will be tormented?
Me, umiarom.
Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted?
Uteshuva, utefila, utzedaka, mavirin et roh hagezerah.
But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. We continue on page 184 with the Kedusha.
Nekadesh, Nekadesh et Shemcha ba'olam, Nekadesh et Shemcha ba'olam, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מהרום. ככתוב היד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו אדיר אדירנו אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ ברוך שמות אדוני ממקומו אחד. הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור. הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Amen.
We're welcome to be seated. We turn to page 194. I invite you to join me in reading at the top of the page. You chose us with love to be messengers of mitzvot, and through us you have made known your aspirations. Among all the many people, you gave us a pathway to holiness. Among all the great nations, you uplifted us and made yourself our sovereign. And so we seek you and serve you and celebrate our nearness to your presence. Your great and sacred name has become our calling. In your love, eternal our God, you have given us this day of remembrance, a day for the shofar's joyful sound, a day, a sacred assembly, a day to be mindful of our people's going out from Egypt. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness. Together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel, may we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of remembrance.
Zochreinu Adonai Eloheinu bo letova.
Eternal our God, remember us.
Amen.
Ufokdeinu bo livracha.
Be mindful of us.
Amen.
Vehoshienu bo lechaim.
Amen.
And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing.
We're going to have the opportunity now, which only comes once a year, to assume a posture of surrender in our prayer. This prayer will be the Great Aleinu. In a moment, we're going to open the Ark for the Great Aleinu. And in pre-COVID times, and God willing, again, I invite everybody here to come out into the aisles and find a space where you can really fully come into a posture of a full prostration, something that we as Jews are not accustomed to doing in our prayer life. Instead, I'm going to invite you, those of you at home, of course, if you're able to do that and want to try that, to as we bow down, rather than just bowing, as in the regular Aleinu, to come all the way down onto the floor and fully prostrate ourselves while kneeling. You might want to try that, and I'll tell you why. The 18th century Polish Hasidic Rabbi Simcha Bunim coined one of the great parables of our tradition. He said that everyone must have two pockets with a note in each pocket so that you can reach into one or the other depending on what you need. When you're feeling lowly and depressed or discouraged, you should reach into the right pocket, and there you will find the words, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, which comes from the Talmud, the world was created for me, which might mean we're remembering and understanding the unique purpose of our lives, the unique gifts that we have to offer the world. But when you're feeling really good about yourself, maybe a little too powerful, you should reach into your left pocket and find the words, Va'anochi afar ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes. And it's exactly that mix of powerlessness and power, vulnerability and responsibility, which is at the heart of the Aleinu prayer, but also at the heart of all of these high holy days. So these words that we're about to chant together, the Aleinu, we typically say at the conclusion of each service, but they were originally written for the shofar service on Rosh Hashanah. Aleinu means it is on us. We are responsible. So that suggests that we have power. But it also contains the words, Va'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim. We bow, we prostrate ourselves, we give thanks before God. So we're going to take a literal deep dive into the meaning of this prayer. Either, if you have the space wherever you are at home and would like to fully prostrate yourselves, but here in the sanctuary, what is a posture you might be able to come into, even if it's just letting your head hang low a little bit, or even bowing in your seat a little bit, something, or you can stand up and bow, but where you keep your pods and your distance, but are able to experience within your body a little more of that sense of surrender and powerlessness. I like to compare it to taking child's pose in yoga, if any of you are yogis, and really experiencing that sense of surrender. We don't control everything. We don't know what the new year will bring, and yet we're so powerful to do our work in the world and to bring this new year into the healing and wholeness that we need it to be. So we're going to turn to page 202, and when we get to the words Va'anachnu korim, find a posture within yourself, however you're able and wherever you are, that feels like surrender.
Please rise.
Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. We can be seated. We'll turn to Ritzay on page 209. Ritzay Adonai Eloheinu בעמך ישראל ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ותהי לרצון תמיד עבודת ישראל ישראל עמך אל קרוב לכל קוראיו פנה אל עבדיך וחוננו שפוך רוחך עלינו ותחזינה עינינו בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון לציון. Now, this part of our Amidah, it's a long Amidah, so I'm not asking you to stand for the whole Amidah, but these are all blessings that are part of it. And this next one is our simple but so deep gratitude blessing. We sing Modim Anachnu Lach. Not just Modim, we are thankful. Modim Anachnu Lach. We are thankful to you. We place ourselves in relationship to something which transcends us when we express our gratitude. We recognize that the blessings of our lives are not through our own power alone, but there is a force that transcends us and binds us together, to which we owe our deepest gratitude for this great gift of life. So I invite you to take a moment, really reflect on, try to find three things from the past year, 5781, that we've let go of, but for which you are grateful. They could be very detailed, they could be general. But I invite you to think of them as I'm going to sing a few times through this melody for Modim Anachnu Lach. We're on page 210. Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim, Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim, Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim, Modim Anachnu Lach. Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim Anachnu Lach, Modim, Modim Anachnu Lach. Having given thanks, we now turn to the priestly blessing, the most ancient words of blessing known to us. They come right from the Torah. And they were and are traditionally recited by the Kohanim, the priests or the descendants of the priests. As I mentioned last night, though, I will bestow this blessing upon you, but we all can bestow blessing on one another. You certainly do not need to be a member of the clergy to bring blessing to your community, and many of you do and have and will. And so let this be a blessing which helps you remember your power to be a blessing and to bring a blessing to one another in the coming year. Traditionally, I like to invite folks to either wrap arms or talit around one another. So you are sitting in your pods, your households. If you are here with a loved one and would like to wrap your talit around one another, but I would say that if you're not in the same household or pod, don't do that, because we want to keep you distanced for everyone's safety. But you can do that, and if you're not here with a loved one, you're here in spirit with a loved one. So call that person to mind, whether they are here today but somewhere else geographically, or even if it's someone that you love very much and has passed. I want to invite us to just take in love and give love as and connection as I recite the priestly blessing. And I'm going to invite us to rise for this one. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. May you know God's blessings of shelter and care. Ken yehi ratzon, ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May you receive the light of God's kindness and grace. Ken yehi ratzon, yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May you see God's favor and goodness, and may you partake of God's peace. Ken כן יהי רצון.
You're welcome to be seated. When we pray to be inscribed in the book of life, we pray not only for ourselves and our loved ones in our community, but for all the Jewish people around the world. We are known as Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, and the idea that we are one people is such a powerful and resonant notion with me. And I invite you, when we sing this prayer this morning, to really bring in all the Jewish people, the Jews who don't look like you, the Jews who don't vote like you, the Jews who live around the world and practice in such different ways. I see some shaking heads. It's hard sometimes. Feel where you're challenged. Feel where that resistance came up. But we are one people. We have always looked out for one another, and if we are to remain one people, we need to continue to look after another, no matter how we pray, no matter how we look, no matter how we live. We are a small but powerful nation, and we have a stake in this together. And so please reach out, expand your heart, and bring in those both in your life and those that you don't know, and offer this prayer on behalf of all Jewish people, that we all may be inscribed for another year in the book of life. We turn to page 216 for B'Sefer Chaim.
בספר חיים ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה נזכר וניכתב לפניך אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
We take a few moments this morning for our own private prayer, and we'll join together in a couple moments for a prayer for peace.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
turn to page 224 in our prayer books. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within and among us.
We're going to chant Avinu Malkeinu, and I invite you to really, we struggle with these images. Avinu means father, Malkeinu means king. Just understand that these are just some of so many images and metaphors for God. As I shared last night in the words of Rabbi Karen Kadar, we exchange precision for poetry when we try to talk about God or imagine God. God is all of these things and none of these things at all. We grasp with the language that we have. Avinu Malkeinu, God as loving parent, God as sovereign, as we sing on page 225.
Please rise.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, Ve'alol aleinu, Ve'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei dever, Ve'cherev ve'ra'av, Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kalei chol tzar, U'mastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chotveinu beSefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Shma Kolenu, Shma Kolenu, Shma Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vaneinu, Ki ein banu masim.
We're welcome to be seated, and we turn to page 227 for Ein Kamocha.
13 attributes.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch, leolam vaed. Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Avarachamim heitiva bertzoncha et Zion. Tivna chomot Yerushalayim, Tivna chomot Yerushalayim. Kivecha levad batachnu, Melech el ram venisa Adon ulamim.
We turn to page 228 and we rise as the ark is opened.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, Varav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon Va'fesha V'chata'a V'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, Varav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon Va'fesha V'chata'a V'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, V'rav Chesed Ve'emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Nosei Avon Va'fesha V'chata'a V'nakeh. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'norah Shemo.
Lecha
Adonai Hagedula, Hagevura, V'atiferet, V'hanetzach, V'hahod. Tichol v'shamayim u'va'aretz, Tichol u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, V'amid na'aseh lechol rosh.
You can be seated.
Our reading this morning comes from the book of Genesis and the Akedah. Before I say a few words about our Torah reading, I just want to explain the choreography. I want to say we've taken every precaution we can so that we can be here today. Everybody who is up on the bima has been tested 2 or 3 times in the last few days to make sure that we are COVID negative. And we're asking that everybody who comes up for an aliyah or a reading come to this podium and to offer your blessing. And after saying the concluding blessing of the aliyah, that you head down and have a seat, and we will invite up the next person to keep as much distance and to keep everybody as safe as possible. The Torah reading for today can be found on page 240 in our prayer book. The story of God testing Abraham and Abraham's test of faith hits a little differently for me every year. And this year, it really feels like the year of impossible choices, of choosing between 2 things which we both want or both don't want, and we don't know how to strike the balance. For Abraham, he's asked to choose between his lifelong vocation of serving Adonai and of his favorite son, Yitzhak. How can he possibly choose? We are often struck by Abraham's seeming inhumanity in that he says nothing, he offers no protest. He wakes up the next morning and he gathers the wood, he gathers the fire, and he gathers his son and his servants to head off. But sometimes I feel that in a year of impossible choices, we can't sit there agonizing. We can't sit there protesting. Sometimes there is nothing to say. We just have to get up and go forward until we have new information. And so I give Abraham so much compassion. My goal for this last year and a half and my goal going forward is to offer everybody in my life the most compassion that I can, knowing that we are all faced with impossible choices. And I know I've discussed this Torah portion with many of you over the years, and it is fair to offer your criticism and your judgment and your questions of Abraham in this difficult moment. But this year, I think it is also a chance to practice our compassion and to imagine that in a time where he is not possibly able to choose between the 2 things he is most devoted to, he goes forward until he is able to learn the right path. We're on page 240, and Rabbi Berkman will invite up our Torah blessers this morning.
It's my honor to call up some members of our community who represent groups of community members who have done so much to enable our synagogue community to survive and to thrive and to really be there for one another in this past year and a half. So for the first aliyah, I call up Larry Green, who is representing this morning the Kayla's Caring community, our Chesed community, our committee which does compassionate deeds, and Denise Green, who does so much for our community in so many ways as well, and brings her full self and her spirit to our davening. So I call up Larry and Denise for this first aliyah. Yamdu lev ben David vehinda veditza bat Levi Avraham vegibora Sarah la'aliyah harishona.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Vayehi achar hedvarim ha'ele v'ha'Elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer hineni vayomer kachna et bincha et yechidecha asher achavta et Yitzhak v'lech lecha el eretz hamoria v'halehu sham le'olah al echad heharim asher omar elecha vayashkem Avraham baboker vayachavosh et chamaro vayikach et shnei ne'arav ito v'et Yitzchak beno vayivka atzei olah vayakom vayelech El hamakom asher omar lo ha'Elohim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chaye olam nata b'dokenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. For the second aliyah, it's my honor to call up Richard Stern, Richard and Lance. Richard has been our treasurer, our co-treasurer, and has worked harder than I think any of us here in the last year and a half. Thank you, Richard, and for representing the Finance Committee for all of the incredible work that you have done to help manage us and get us through this time. We're so honored that you and Lance can take this aliyah. Ya'amdu Baruch ben Rachmael v'Lev ben Simcha la'aliyah hashenit.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok vayomer Avraham el ne'arav shavu lachem po im hachamor ve'ani ve'hana'ar nelecha ad ko v'nishtachave v'nashuva alechem vayikach Avraham et atzei ha'olah vayasem al Yitzchak beno vayikach biyado et ha'esh ve'et ha'ma'achelet vayelchu shnehem yachdav.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher koach. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to invite our amazing cantorial soloist to share a few words of intention before our third aliyah, and then he will chant our third aliyah this morning. Avi?
Could we call up the third
Sure.
aliyah,
So
but
for
not
the
have them do the bracha?
For the third aliyah, you're going to come up, but then wait until Avi gives his few words of wisdom before you say the bracha. But it's my honor to call up Howard Koor and Ellen Mosner, representing the brotherhood and the sisterhood, though they both do so much for all of us in even more capacities than that. We're so honored to call you up this morning for an aliyah. Yamdu Hillel Yitzchak ben Shalom Chaim ve'Esther Rachel bat Pinchas v'Dina la'aliyah ha'shlishit.
Not the bracha yet. I love the word Baruch, and I'd just like to pause for 2 minutes on the word Baruch. And though I have a lot of pages of notes, I write big. And the first letter in the word Baruch is the bet, and it represents a tent, actually, a house with an open flap, a tent wide open like Abraham Avinu had a tent with Sarah, and they invited everybody in, and that's what they were known most for, their hospitality. The bet means bait, which means house. The word Baruch has 3 letters in it. The second letter is the Resh. Can we all say Baruch?
Baruch.
Anybody know another word that starts with from the same root that starts with a bet? Baruch Hu, which you are about to sing the chant Baruch Hu. And Yivarechacha is from the same root word. And Hebrew is the most amazing language. Of course, I don't know too many, but the Resh represents the back of the head, or the head, Rosh. Can you see a Resh here? A little disturbed by what's left of the hair. Resh, Rosh, head. And the last letter is Kaf. This is a Kaf Sofit. And the Kaf comes from the palm. Kaf means palm, or like kippah. It's that shape that holds a little water, not very much. The kippah helps us be right-sized. We've been talking about being right-sized. And we put these three letters together, and it suggests, well, let's put these two together first. These two letters together, Rach, suggests something soft or tender, the way we're feeling a lot these days, pretty soft and tender. It also suggests, in modern Hebrew, permeability. So for the scientists around us, this is not a permeable membrane. But, when you make chicken soup, all those little tissues between the bits of meat and flesh, those are permeable interstitial tissues that allow things to pass through. And when we put these three wonderful letters together, we have several wonderful roots. One is Baruch. We know it. Baruch Hu is in there. When we put these three words together and we get Baruch Hu or Baruch, it is of essence that we pause when we say Baruch and open to the possibility. Allow ourselves to be permeable. Let things come in our head, our Rosh, into the hand. Head thinks, hand does. So in all of our actions and all of our thinking, we are asked many times a day, a lot in this service, to become open to the possibilities that this moment will bring for us. And Abraham, that we're reading about in a moment, is struck, as Rabbi Daniel has said, he's struck with choices. And he doesn't know what to choose. And he is called upon, as we know, we feel today, that we may have made bad choices and that it's important for us to make the right choice for our children, lest we confuse our choices and don't choose life for them, for your children, your grandchildren, for all future children. It is upon us today and forevermore to make choices that protect the lives of all children, whether they're human or animal. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. Howard and Ellen, I invite you to lead us in the Aliyah blessing, and we'll pick up with verse 7 in chapter 22.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Vayomer Yitzchak El Avraham Aviv, Vayomer Hineni, Vayomer Hineni. I'll do this once again. I had the wrong spot. ויאמר יצחק אל אברהם אבי, ויאמר אבי, ויאמר הנני בני, ויאמר הנה האש והעצים, ואייעשה לעולה, לעולה. And Isaac called out to his father Abraham, Abraham, father, and he said, here I am, my son. Vayomer hine ha'esh v'ha'itzim, and he said, here's the fire, and here are the trees, the wood. Ve'ayehaseh, where's the little goat to offer up? Vayomer Avraham Elohim Yirelo Haseh Leola Beno, and he said, Elohim, God, will show us the goat to Olah, to lift up. Vayilchu shnehem yachdav, and the two of them walked together. Vayavo el hamakom asher amar lo ha'Elohim. Vayiven sham Avraham et hamizbeach, v'ya'akod et v'ya'aroch et ha'etzim, v'ya'akod et Yitzchak beno. And Abraham built the altar, and he put the wood in order and placed his son on top of the wood. Vayasem oto al hamizbeach, and he placed him on the altar, mimala etzim, above the wood. Vayishlach Avraham et yado, vayikach et hama'achelet, and Abraham sent out his hand, and he took the all-consuming blade. Lishchot et beno, in order to sacrifice, to slaughter his son. V'ikra elav malach Adonai min hashamayim, and an angel of God called out to him from heaven, Vayomer Avraham, Avraham, Vayomer hineni, Vayomer al tishlach yadecha, and the angel said, don't put forth your hand, el hanar, upon this lad, ve'al ta'as lo me'uma, ki ata yadati, and don't make even a blemish on him, for now I know. Ki yireh Elohim ata, for you are a reverer of God. Lo hasachta et bincha et yichidecha mihimeni, you didn't even spare your son from me. Vayisa Avraham et einav vayar v'hine ayil achar. And he lifted up his eyes and he saw another goat, not his son, a different one. V'ya'alehu le'olah tachat beno, and he offered up this goat instead of his son. Vayikra Avraham Shem Hamakom Hahu, and Abraham called the name of this place Adonai Yireh, God will see, Asher Yamer Hayom Behar Adonai Yevael.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'torchenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. At this time, before we, Yasher Koach, Howard and Ellen, thank you. Yasher Koach to Avi. Before we lift and wrap the Torah, we'll take this time to call to mind and to heart those who are in need of any kind of healing. These may be people that you know personally, or many groups of people across our nation and our planet who are suffering on account of natural disasters or COVID or anything else. So let's bring healing energy by calling all of those that we know and love, and maybe those we don't know, into our minds and hearts now. We're going to sing Misha Berach on page 245. We're going to share a few names we know from our community who are in need of healing, but we also invite you to either say quietly aloud, those of you at home, of course, please say their names aloud in your space so that we can bring more names into our space this morning.
As a community, we're praying for the healing of Allison Rim, Miriam Rivka, Bat Ephraim Yehudit, for Linda Grossman, Cameron Lopez, Betty Vinacore, Claire Rufino, Julia Hum, Elia Garza, Valerie, Gail Broly Evans, Cassandra Warshawski, Chaya Blima, Bat Chaim Chia, Vasilia Ruchel, for Jeffrey Colt, Laser Berger, Seville Pacaglio, Elisa Simon, Alicia Stanton, and David Jacobs. For all those mentioned here, and for all those spoken out loud in this room and on our Zoom and in our hearts, we pray for healing this morning.
Misheberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov Misheberach Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Leah Uyevarech et hacholim Ve'yishlach lahem Refuah Shleima Refuat HaNefesh Urefuat HaGuf Refuat HaNefesh Urefuat HaGuf Refuat HaNefesh Urefuat HaGuf Venomar Amen.
We're going to lift the Torah. We'll be singing on page 246. Please rise as the Torah is raised.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. ירה ילה לה ירה לה לה ילה לה לה ya ra 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 la la ya ra ra ya ra.
be seated. Our Haftorah reading for this morning comes from the book of Samuel. The Rosh Hashanah is known as the birthday of the world, and so we read Torah readings and we read Haftorah readings that evoke fertility. It can be very difficult to conceive. It can be very difficult to give birth. And I'm struck this year that while we read this famous story and we empathize with Hannah and we're so happy for her success, we don't always extend that same love and compassion to those in our world. As I've gotten older and more of my friends have made the choice to have children, I've begun to understand how difficult it is. Everybody's fertility journey is different. Some people's are easy and happen quickly. Some take a very long time and are very difficult, and some never come to fruition. I talked earlier today about extending our compassion to those who are different from us, and I invite us as we hear this Haftorah this morning and we think about Hannah's difficulty and the sacrifices she is willing to make, that we think about those in our life who have made the choice to bring children into this world, whether it was easy for them or whether it was hard, and we extend our compassion to those who are struggling right now. We think about you and we think about all those who want to bring life into this world, and we offer our blessings for your success. The blessings for this morning's Haftorah reading can be found on page 247. It is my pleasure to invite up Len Davidson to lead us in the Haftorah, which begins on page 250.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah Moshe Avdo, V'Yisrael Amo, Uvinviei Ha'emet Latzedek. Vayehi Ish Echad Min Harmatayim Tzofim Mehar Ephraim Ushmo Elkanah ben Roham ben Elihu ben Tohu ben Suf Ephrati V'lo shtei nashim shem achat Chana V'shem hashenit Penina Vayihi Ifin Lifnina Yiladim Ulechana Ein Yiladim Ve'ala Ha'ish Hahu Me'iro Miyamim Yamima Lehishtachavot V'lizboach L'Adonai Tzivaot B'Shilo V'Sham Shnei V'nei Eli Chafni U'Finchas Kohanim L'Adonai Vayhi Hayom Vayizbach Elkanah Tan Lifnina Ishto Uchavno Banecha Uvnotecha Manot Ulchana Yitain Mana Achat Apayim Ki Et Chana Yahev Vadonai Sagarachma V'chasta tzarakta gam kaas ba'avur har imah ki sagar Adonai ba'ad rachma v'chein yaseh shana b'shana midei alota b'vet Adonai kein tachisena v'tivke v'lo tochal. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol halamim tzadik b'chol hadarot Ha'el haneman homer v'yoseh hamdaber umkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'davar echad midvarecha achor lo yashuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el haneman b'chol devarav Rachem al Tzion ki beit chayenu v'laluvat nefesh toshia b'mheira v'yameinu Baruch atah Adonai v'samech Tzion b'vanecha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha Umalchut Beit David Mishichecha Bimheira Yavo V'Yagel Libenu Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar V'Lo Yinchalu Od Achirim Et Kvodo Ki V'Shem Kachecha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichbe Nero Leolam Vayed Baruch atah Adonai Magen David Al HaTorah v'al Havodah v'al Hanvim v'al Yom HaZikaron Hazeh Shet Natata Lanu Adonai Eloheinu Lechavod Ultifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu Modim Lach Umvarchim Otach Yitbarach Shimcha B'fi Kol Chai Tamid Leolam Va'ed Udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad. Baruch atah Adonai melech al kol ha'aretz mikadesh Yisrael v'yom hazikaron.
Amen.
Thank you, Len. While the Torah is still in our midst, it is an auspicious time to offer prayers. This morning, we offer a prayer for the state of Israel, which can be found on page 274, and in a moment, a prayer for our community. Please join me in reading this blessing for the state of Israel on page 274. Avinu, you who are high above all nation states and peoples, Rock of Israel, the one who has saved us and preserved us in life, bless the state of Israel, first flowering of our redemption. Be her loving shield, a shelter of lasting peace. Guide her leaders and advisors by your light of truth. Instruct them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who build and protect our holy land. Deliver them from danger, crown their efforts with success. Grant peace to the land, lasting joy to all her people. And together we say, Amen. Amen. It's my pleasure to invite up Shelley Robbins to lead us in the prayer for our congregation, which can be found on page 270. Shelley, you said you've been waking up early and greeting people here for 21 years. What a blessing to have you in our community and to offer this blessing this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Eternal Presence, who blessed our mothers and fathers, bless this holy congregation, a house of study, prayer, and righteous deeds. Together we give thanks for our leaders, those who learn, teach, and uphold the Torah, inspiring others to learn, teach, and uphold the Torah. Those who do the sacred work of building our community, May their service bring them joy, fulfillment, and purpose, and may they go from strength to strength. For our members, diverse in age, interest, and background, Jews by birth, Jews by choice, and those of other faiths who join with us, all who offer their time and talent, their love and commitment. For all who come here on this day of Rosh Hashanah to share the search for meaning and renewal, your presence is a blessing, your friendship a gift. May the spirit of peace, dignity, and respect live within these walls, inspiring us to care for one another with compassion. And may we be a source of goodness, light, and healing for the world. May the one who blessed the generations before us bless us as we stand together this day. One congregation, joined with all Jewish communities of the world through our prayers on this festival of the new year. Let us renew ourselves for the year ahead. Let us honor the precious legacy that is ours. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Shelley.
Amen. Yishar kochech. Thank you, Shelley.
We're going to return the Torah to the Ark, and I invite you to rise as the Torah is lifted and the Ark is open. We turn to page 276 in our prayer books for Eitz Chaim.
Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado. Odo al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren le'amo. Teila lechol chasidav, libnei Yisrael, am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu. Eitz Chaim hi lamachzik ima v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchenoam v'chol netzivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva, chadesh yameinu kekedem.
We can be seated. I'm honored to be able to share some words of Torah this morning. In 1994, a 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck Los Angeles in the middle of the night. LA residents, shaken from their beds, ran outside or looked out their windows and saw deep darkness. The earthquake had knocked out power across the city. As one account of that night put it, they looked up at the sky. It was flush with cosmic bodies that had been invisible up to that point. Twinkling stars, clustered galaxies, distant planets, even a satellite or two. Then some people became nervous. What was that large, silvery cloud that trailed over the city? It looked so sinister, many called 911. That cloud was the Milky Way. They had never seen it before. The Milky Way, steadily shining for eons, but to the modern eye, invisible, until the electric lights of the city went out due to a natural disaster. I recently learned that the term apocalypse actually means an uncovering. It comes from the Greek word apocalypsis, which means a lifting of the veil, and typically refers to the revelation of something previously hidden. In the past year and a half, the metaphorical lights have gone out. So many familiar landscapes have been cast in darkness, and our eyes have had to adjust, like when you go into a darkened movie theater on a bright sunny day. When we enter that darkened theater, things that are in one moment invisible to us begin to take on contours and outlines, and soon enough we're able to see what was there all along. What has taken shape and become visible to us during the pandemic, which we never even realized was there before? And what demands our response? Amidst the busyness of this past summer, I had the gift of a short vacation in York Beach, Maine. It was there, away from the piles of papers demanding that I respond to them, my overflowing inboxes, away from the barrage of news as I tried to limit my consumption of news and social media. With the scope of my seeing narrowed, I was able to see more clearly that which most needed my attention, and I was better able to respond. Surely the ocean air and my daily witnessing of the power and expanse of the ocean, which is my favorite sight in the natural world, helped to bring this new clarity. In fact, I began to think that if I could see the ocean in its steady, beautiful, rhythmic power on a more regular basis, it would help my soul in so many ways. Paradoxically, the view of that wide expanse of ocean, coupled with my newly narrowed field of vision with less coming at me all the time, served to help me see better. I was better able to see myself, better able to see others, better able to see and consider how I can best be of service to the world at this painful moment of multiple communal crises. For most of human history, the scope of our vision was infinitely more narrow than it is today. The sheer number of human beings with whom we interact in a given day, thanks to our digital technology, far, far outnumbers the number of other people our ancestors interacted with, when their worlds were by definition hyper-local. Those you saw or spoke to were those who lived close to you, family, friends, members of your local tribe or town or community. So much calls out to us. We become scattered, exhausted, and overwhelmed rather than focused, awake, and responsive. Truly to pay attention, to see and respond to what needs tending, mending, healing all around us, we need sometimes to shut some of it out, to close our eyes, to enter into the darkness so that what was there all along, but we never noticed, can come into focus for us. What can we draw from Jewish tradition to help us bring our full attention, our full capacity to see, to a world spilling over with need? Today, we read the story of Abraham and Isaac, of faith and fear and near sacrifice. But that story can't happen without another story of fear and faith, a story of vision and clarity. In many communities, this story is the one that is read on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. It's the story of Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant, who bears a child, Ishmael, for Abraham, when Sarah cannot conceive. Pregnant with her child, Hagar runs away from the infertile Sarah's jealousy and mistreatment. And as happens with so many of our ancestors, she meets an angel who names her son to be and makes her a promise for the future. In that moment, Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant, becomes the only person in Torah to give God a name. The verse reads, "And she called the Lord who spoke to her, 'You are El Roi,' by which she meant, 'Have I not gone on seeing after he saw me?'" As the Eitz Chaim Chumash commentary notes, El Roi can be translated as God of seeing, the all-seeing God, but also God of my seeing and God who sees me. And remember, Hagar says, "You are El Roi. Have I not gone on seeing after he saw me?" Hagar has likely felt overlooked in her humanity, seen only for her procreative value. She is objectified. One can imagine that she has felt unseen for a very long time. Alone and despondent after Sarah's mistreatment, running away but unsure of where to go, she seems astonished that God sees her. And in being seen, she is better able to see. Later, Hagar is cast out into the desert wilderness along with her son Ishmael by Sarah. When their flask of water runs dry in the hot desert sun, Hagar places Ishmael under a bush and sits at a distance from him, saying, "Let me not look upon my son while he dies." But then, perhaps because she has encountered a God who sees her, God opens her eyes and she can see a well of water when she most needs it. The well was there all along. In order to see what we most need, we need to feel seen as a full human being, no matter where we come from. We need to be and feel seen in our fullness and in our suffering. El Roi saw Hagar, and she understood in that moment that in being seen, she was being empowered to see. We all long to feel seen, known, and understood. And when we do, healing is created in us, and that enables us to see others and to help them heal. And also, sometimes we need to close our eyes. We need to sit, as Hagar did, at a distance. On the surface, this wisdom seems to run counter to being awake, alert, attentive to the enormity of the world's grief. But the devastating effects of floods, fires, hurricanes, droughts, earthquakes, gun violence, the pandemic, it's too much for us to see at once. We cannot let it all in at once, and we cannot let it in all the time. Sometimes we need to sit at a distance to close our eyes. It's actually an act of self-compassion, which then generates compassion for others, letting ourselves rest in order to renew our energy for attention and response. It can be hard to let ourselves close our eyes for rest and renewal, and to close our eyes in the sense of taking leave of the suffering of the world and doing what brings us joy. How can we enjoy a meal with loved ones, or a concert, or a day in a park, or just sing along to our favorite songs in our cars when so much is happening, so many are suffering? In order to see it and respond to it, we need to dance when we can. We need to sing when we can. We need to eat delicious foods and enjoy loving the people we love when we can. This might seem like tuning out, but letting ourselves live with a rhythm of eyes open and eyes closed enables our eyes to be open to what is most needed, to see and to help others see what was there all along. When our field of vision is narrowed or even darkened or renewed because we have closed our eyes for a bit, what is most important and necessary can come into focus. Temporarily shutting out the barrage of information and images pouring through us out of our screens, and taking time for joy and for pleasure helps us to be better present and responsive to the world's need. Hagar encountered the malach, the angel, in her time of deepest need. She was seen and thus able to see that life-giving well of water. Each of us can be a malach, an angel of God, when we open our eyes fully and with undistracted attention to another person. And when we truly see one another, we create in them the capacity to see. When we bring full presence to one another, seeing them no matter their identity, role in society, as created in the divine image, we nurture in them the ability to see. And when our vision is clear and focused and responsive, we can notice what was there all along. And then we're able to partner with God in the healing of the world. The Milky Way galaxy was just overhead, but in the cityscape of Los Angeles, beaming too much light into the darkness above, it was invisible. It was invisible until the familiar landscape, the light and buzz of the city, was suddenly cast into darkness. Then a miraculous sight came into view. Entering the new year 5782, I invite you to reflect. What has come into view for you during the sudden darknesses of the past 18 months? How has your vision become more focused? What have you seen? How have we held on to moments of joy with an attentiveness we may not have felt so intensely before? How have we helped others to feel seen and in turn to see others? Though many have used the term apocalypse to describe this time with some degree of sarcasm or assumed exaggeration, this uncovering, to use the original meaning of the term, has lifted the veil. Our eyes are newly opened to each other, to injustices and suffering, to what needs our attention, our healing. May this uncovering inspire and empower us to build a better world in which new light emerges, new light, which was there all along. Shana Tova.
Yesher Koach. Thank you, Rabbi Berkman. We move to Aleinu on page 270. I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 287 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטש שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו
We're welcome to be seated.
Just a reflection before we recite Mourner's Kaddish for our loved ones, whether it is the anniversary of their death, yahrzeit, or if we are in a time of mourning. And of course, on Yom Kippur, we'll have the opportunity to remember all of our loved ones, and we will especially take time to remember those who have died in the past year within our community. Now we're going to recite Mourner's Kaddish, and I'll invite you to rise as is your custom when we recite Mourner's Kaddish on page 292. But first, a reading on page 291. There are stars up above, so far away, we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. So it is with people that we loved. May their memories keep shining ever brightly though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. Because we're a large group and some of us are not here in the building, I'm going to invite everyone to Say a name or names quietly to yourself if you're reciting Kaddish today, and to rise as is your custom for Mourner's Kaddish on page 292. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael v'agala u'v'zman kori v'imru amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kodesha b'richu le'ela u'le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
You may be seated. It's my pleasure to invite up our president, Mark Gale, to share a few announcements with us this morning. We're blessed to have Mark's leadership on the board this year, and I hope you'll have the opportunity to get to know him both today and on Yom Kippur and in the year ahead.
And don't worry, after that, we really will hear the shofar.
It really is great to see everybody, and I'm so happy that we're also joined by so many of us virtually through our online connection. I want to thank the ushers, all volunteer. We couldn't do all this without you. Clergy, beautiful service. Thank you, Avi. And all of the staff that worked so hard in preparation. Okay, on to announcements. This afternoon, our intergenerational family service will be led by our clergy and music educator, Josh Cohen, at 3 p.m. outside in the parking lot tent. It will also be live streamed. Immediately following the family service, join us for Tashlich at the Muddy River. Please gather on the chapel steps at 4:15 or meet us directly at the Muddy River at approximately 4:30. Tomorrow, the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we have 2 wonderful learning sessions. 10 a.m., The God of Hagar and Ishmael with Rabbi Schaefer. 11 a.m., the poetry of the Akedah with Rabbi Berkman. Both are available on Zoom. We have an email program that went out, and you can also log into ShowCloud, your ShowCloud account, which is through our website, for the links there. Next week, Kol Nidre services are Wednesday, September 15th at 8 p.m. For a complete schedule, please go to our website, www.ohabei.org. We have the full schedule there, and you'll probably also receive it in a newsletter form through email. We want to thank you for contributing to our annual food drive. We have grocery bags up front that you can pick up on the way out, and the idea is you can put in a non-perishable food item and bring it back on Yom Kippur, and we will donate it. Or you can provide a financial donation. There's a memo that went out with details about it if you have any questions. Online donations are also acceptable via our website. And finally, as you exit, please help our facility staff bring your prayer books up to the front. I think we have a table out in the lobby. So thank you all, and Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. Thank you, Mark. We have a rule at Ohabei Shalom that if you leave your phone on, the ringer has to be set to a shofar sound.
There are many apps for shofar listening. So you're not going to hear all 100 blasts today. That is traditional. You're going to hear some. But you can go on the app and make your 100, okay?
The shofar is our spiritual alarm clock. It is what wakes us up. Some people have been hearing the sound of the shofar for the last month during the month of Elul when we gathered on Slichot. Many of us got to see the incredible video that was put together last year and to hear that incredible Tekiah Gedola. But today is known as Yom Truah, and that word Truah, which is about the shouting, the joyous blowing of the shofar, can also mean screaming. And I think there have been times last year where some of us have just felt this need to scream, to let out a primal roar. And I hope you don't leave synagogue today with that feeling. But if you feel it in that next 10 days, I invite you to find that safe space in your house where you're not going to scare any children or animals, and to let out that scream, that release. And that is what the shofar brings us, a sense of release, of letting go, and of waking up so that we can return to our highest selves in these days and in the years to come. It's my pleasure to invite Eddie Jacobs and Joshua Paradise to be our shofar blowers this morning. We turn to page 284 for our blessings, and we rise to hear the shofar. Baruch atah Adonai, shomea kol teruah, amo Yisrael barachamim. Blessed are you in our lives, Adonai. You hear with love the shofar, true voice of your people Israel.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. אמן.
Tekiah. Shivarim teruah. Tekiah. Tekiah. Shivarim. Tekiah. Tekiah. Teruah. Tekiah gedolah.
Wow, Yasher Koach, those were amazing. How joyful, how energizing and awakening. We're going to now conclude our service with some blessings, and then you'll actually get to see a video of our choir along with Avi singing Yigdal as we leave for today, and we hope to see many of you later, and certainly in the coming days and for Yom Kippur. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lecha min haaretz.
Amen.
We have some apples here. We hope that you will enjoy some apples a little bit later. And of course, we are going to dip them in honey. So our blessing for the apples, if I can open the package, is, I give up, is Borei Pri Ha'etz. Thank you, God, who created the fruit of the tree. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz.
Amen.
And finally, the blessing for dipping the apple in the honey. I had to take a bite because you're supposed to do the thing that you're saying the blessing for right after you say the blessing. So it's not because I just couldn't help myself, although sometimes I can't. But this was really a true Jewish reason. So now the blessing for a sweet new year. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu shetechadesh aleinu shana tova u'metuka. Our God and God of our ancestors, eternal God of all generations, may your presence in our lives this year renew our spirits and renew our strength. May it be a good year. May it be a sweet year. Shana tova.
יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא ועינת אל מציאותו.
אחד ויחיד ואיחודו, נעלם וגם אינסוף לאחדותו.
אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו.
אבל לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית ראשיתו.
אינו אדון עולם לכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו.
שפט וכוחו נתן לו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו.
לא קם לישראל כמו שעוד, נביא ומעביד את אמונתו.
תורה אמת נתן לעם אוהל, עד ים עליון נאמן ביתו.
לא יכל לפאר ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזוגתו.
צופה ויודע שפרנו, מעביד לסוף דבר וכאן הכל.
גמל איש חסד מפעלו, נותן לרשע רק רשעתו.
ישלח לקץ ימים את ראשיתנו, לבנות לכך קץ ישועתו.
חיי עולם נטע בתוכנו,